Speed Freaks Unite! F1 Brake Check is back in action. On today's episode, we will talk about the latest news in the world of Formula One. We'll talk about the 2025 team reveal dates, and all new biography is also on tap as well. So sit back in your favorite comfy chair and grab the drink of your choice. F1 Brake Check is roaring at you.
Welcome. You are listening to F1 Brake Check, the epic podcast for all things Formula One, where we discuss technology, history, news, and perspective. With your hosts, Scott Vick and Corey Broom.
All right, we're back with F1 Brake Check. My name is Scott Vick. I am one of your intrepid hosts, and with me, as always, is my fellow host, my pundit for life, my ride or die, the petrol swigging Corey Broom. Corey, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, yeah. It's Monday, and it's just been really just crazy busy today, man.
It's been a Monday, that's for
Yeah.
damn sure.
What about you?
Same. It's
Same,
just
yeah.
trying to get back into the swing of it. We talked about it last week. It was a short week for me. Which I lamented about how sometimes those short weeks are actually
Yeah,
worse
worse, yeah.
because it's like you're trying to cram 5 days worth of work into 4 days, and it's just like it never seems
Yeah,
never seems to end. So yes, it's and then trying to get back into it this week. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so shall we jump into it?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right. When you think of the golden age of Formula One, many names come to mind. Jackie Stewart, Graham Hill, Jack Brabham, Bruce McLaren, Dan Gurney. However, one name stands above the rest: Jim Clark, a farmer from the Scottish borders who rose to become one of the greatest racing drivers the world has ever seen. His story is one of talent and raw speed, a career that blazed brightly before being tragically cut short. Born on March 4th, 1936, in the village of Kilmay, Fife, James Clark Jr. was the youngest of five children. His family soon moved to the border town of Duns, where he grew up on the family farm. It was a simple life, but for the young Jim, it was clear early on that his passions lay far from the fields. Clark's love affair with speed began with local motorsport events, where he started competing in club races with borrowed cars. Despite initial skepticism from his conservative father, Jim's extraordinary talent behind the wheel soon silenced any doubts. By the late 1950s, he was making waves on the British motorsport scene, catching the attention of another one of motorsport's most visionary figures, Colin Chapman. It was Chapman who gave Jim Clark his big break, signing him to drive for Team Lotus in Formula One. And what a pairing it was, a symbiosis of driver and machine that would define the era. Clark made his Formula One debut in 1960 at the Dutch Grand Prix, and from the outset, his driving was something special. By 1962, Clark was a force to be reckoned with. That season, he won 3 races and finished second in the Drivers' Championship, narrowly losing to Graham Hill after a heartbreaking mechanical failure in the final race. In 1963, Clark achieved what many consider one of the most dominant seasons in Formula One history. Driving the Lotus 25, he won 7 of the 10 races that year, clinching his first world championship with ease. His ability to extract every ounce of performance from his car was unparalleled, and his smooth, precise driving style became his hallmark. It wasn't just the victories that set Clark apart, it was the way he achieved them. On the track, he was fearless yet methodical, capable of pushing a car to its limits without ever seeming reckless. Off the track, he was quiet and unassuming, a sharp contrast to the flamboyant personalities that often dominated the sport. The 1965 season was another masterpiece. Clark won 6 of the first 7 races, wrapping up his second world championship with 3 races to spare. But what made that year truly remarkable was his versatility. In May of 1965, just weeks before clinching his second F1 title, Clark traveled to the United States to compete in the Indianapolis 500. Driving the Lotus 38, he dominated the field, leading for 190 of the 200 laps to claim victory. He remains the only driver in history to win both the Formula One World Championship and the Indianapolis 500 in the same year. His accomplishments didn't stop there. Over his F1 career, Clark amassed 25 Grand Prix, a record at the time, and 33 pole positions from just 72 starts. His win percentage of 34.7 remains one of the highest in the sport's history. To his fellow drivers, Jim Clark was more than just a competitor. He was an inspiration. Rival and friend Jackie Stewart once said, "Jim Clark was the best driver ever." The rest of us were just trying to keep up. Even Graham Hill, known for his confidence and charisma, admitted that Clark's natural ability was in a league of his own. But Clark's career wasn't without challenges. The cars of the 1960s were notoriously fragile, and reliability issues often robbed him of victories. Despite this, his loyalty to Lotus never wavered, a testament to his deep respect for Colin Chapman and the team that they built together. By 1968, Clark was still at the height of his power, but his life took a tragic turn on April 7th. Competing in a Formula 2 race at Hockenheim, Germany, Clark's car left the track at high speed and struck a tree. The impact was fatal. He was just 32 years old. The motorsport world was devastated. Jim Clark wasn't just a driver, he was an icon, a benchmark of excellence, and a reminder of the dangers that lurked in every race. His death marked the end of an era and served as a catalyst for increased safety measures in Formula One. Today, Jim Clark's legacy endures. The Jim Clark Museum in Duns celebrates his life and career, drawing fans from around the world who come to honor the man who redefined what it meant to be a racing driver. Jim Clark was more than just a champion, he was a legend. His records were eventually eclipsed, his cars are now museum pieces, but his impact on the sport of Formula One is eternal.
Yeah, that's amazing. Obviously, I've heard the name Jim Clark many times. I just didn't know the backstory, uh, how truly great of a driver he was.
Yeah, I was the same way. I knew who Jim Clark was. I knew, the reverence for which a lot of his contemporaries had for him, especially Stewart, because I've seen a lot of interviews with Jackie Stewart over the years where he talked about, how in his mind, Jim Clark was the greatest ever. And but it wasn't until probably about a week or so ago I actually saw something else, a little blurb in a book, um, talking about Jim Clark's versatility. Because one of the things I cut out of the biography here, because I couldn't find, it was something else that I had found, but I couldn't find a citations in time. But apparently, in addition, in 1963 when he won both the Formula One World Championship and the Indy 500. He also won some Australian uh,
Oh
racing
yeah.
championship that year, and he also won a number of touring car
Wow.
races that year as well and was competing in a touring car championship in which at one point he was leading. So, I mean, the guy was just, he could jump into anything and be fast. And I had no idea just how incredible he was until
Yeah.
I started doing the research for this biography. It's
Right.
so tragic that, back in, the time that, in the quote unquote golden age of Formula One, how unlike today where the drivers are paid literally millions, tens of millions of dollars to drive every year, back then uh, the drivers didn't make hardly anything, even at, being at the very pinnacle of the sport.
Yeah.
That was the reason, one of the reasons why Jim Clark was racing in F2 at the same time he was racing in F1 was just simply because he was just, he needed to do it for the money, you know?
Yeah, I was going to
So
ask you that about that actually. Yeah, why he was driving F2?
yeah. So back then it was not uncommon for Formula One drivers to compete in like touring car races and Formula Two races at the same time was just simply for the extra money.
Wow, that's amazing, right?
Yeah, it is. It's unfathomable. I mean,
Yeah,
other than,
today.
the goofy rules that allow NASCAR drivers to compete in like the junior series and dominate them, at will, other than that, it's unheard of. You would never hear of a Formula One driver going back to compete in F2 or F3,
Hmm.
or an IndyCar driver, going back to compete in Indy Lights or anything like that.
Yeah,
It's just not even something that nobody could even fathom,
right.
but to think that Jim Clark was racing in all these different series and everything in order to compete, it's just incredible.
Yeah,
But the fact that he was fast no matter what he raced is just makes his legend that much more
yeah, exactly.
legendary.
Right.
All right, so let's take and jump into the news. So there's not a lot of news this week, but we've got a couple things that I thought would be kind of interesting for us to take and talk about. So first of all, we talked pretty much at length about Lewis Hamilton's first week at Ferrari. First with all of the hoopla and everything that was uh, made about his first day, what I called his first day at school, which was his first day as an official Ferrari driver, where he visited the factory, met with the team, met with the engineers, things like that. And then we also talked about, um, his first outing in the 2023 Ferrari, you
Yeah,
know. But there's been a couple of news stories that have come out where people have been trying to kind of, I don't know if they're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill already,
right.
but there was first of all, so there was the first thing that came out that said that there was actually issues with Lewis's car when he was running, and the fact that there was a problem with the brake pedal
Yeah.
where coming into the hairpin at Fiorina, the car was actually locking up and nearly sent him into the gravel trap a couple of times.
Wow.
So I don't know this now. This is all being reported by other media sources and everything. This wasn't anything that was being published by Ferrari. This wasn't anything that came from Lewis or anyone else associated with the team. But I thought that it was very interesting the fact that people which to be perfectly honest with you, when you're taking a car, basically taking a car out of mothballs and you're running it for the first time and you've got a driver who's never sat in the car before, and going out, you kind of expect there to be issues. And the fact
Yeah.
that he only ran 30 laps, you expect there to be issues and stuff,
Mhm.
and the fact that people are making such a big deal out of it just blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, they have to, right? They have to report the news, and if there's no news, then they have to fabricate something, right?
Yes, exactly. And especially when you're talking about as big a name as Lewis Hamilton and
Yeah. Yeah.
Ferrari,
Yep.
of course you're going to, see people are going to make a mountain out of a molehill for, and in some cases they're just going to flat make shit up. So, did you see Clarkson's comments?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so megastar Jeremy Clarkson, or at least was megastar in the motoring world, and also in the farming world, Jeremy
Oh,
Clarkson,
yeah.
made some comments about the hoopla that was, made about Lewis's first days at Ferrari. He said that, I don't have the exact comments in front of me, but he said basically, it's more of a, a dog and a pony show because of the way that he showed up all dressed to the nines, and they showed it, everybody applauding him when he got to the factory and everything. And, and the fact that, after he finished, his first stint in the car, how he took and went out there and like was meeting the tifosi who had gathered at the outskirts of the track and everything to watch him run and stuff. And I just thought, I'm really shocked that Clarkson would say something, to that effect, about how it was all for show and everything. To me, I don't know, it seemed just really disingenuous of Clarkson in the
Hmm.
first place because I know that Clarkson is, quite a fan, or at least was, if you go back and if you watch like the time that Lewis was actually on Top Gear doing, when he was one of the Formula One drivers in the reasonably priced car and everything, is it seemed like, Clarkson and Lewis got on quite famously, so I was really kind of shocked about the comments that Lewis, that he made.
Yeah. 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 That's kind of odd. But, did you see his Twitter post where he dressed up like Lewis and
Yes. And I thought that was just brilliant.
yeah.
It was great fun.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe it's something more along the lines, not really necessarily against Lewis, but maybe it's just more like what we were just talking about, just making a big deal out of something that happens all the time, drivers that
Exactly.
are, yeah,
And who knows if those comments may have been, kind of, they were presented as, being a, serious comments, but who knows that, if Clarkson being
yeah,
Clarkson, we all know
right.
what a amazing wit Clarkson has, that, maybe he was doing that very tongue in cheek, but unfortunately the reporter put it very where it was, like I said, it was supposed to be very tongue in cheek, but the reporter took and made way too much out of it and took it way too seriously. Link, did you get a chance to watch the Ferrari hype video that got
I didn't see
released?
it. No,
Oh
no.
my gosh, it is, I mean, and it is literally the epitome of a hype video. It shows, these really cool, quick cut shots of Lewis in and Charles Leclerc in their, new for 2025 overalls and everything. And it was literally just, basically taking the wraps off of what they're starting to refer to as the 1644 uh, era. The 1644 era is what they're referring to it as, which I think is kind of cool, but it opens up with, you can see Lewis's hands and he's beating and you hear a heartbeat and he's beating on his chest
Hmm.
and everything. It is so cool. So it's like
I'll have to
as
definitely
soon
check
as
it
we're
out.
done,
Yeah.
you've got to go watch it.
Yeah.
It is
Right on.
absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
Okay, so another thing that I thought was really cool. So Fernando Alonso this week was actually quoted in the press about saying how impressed he has been both before he came to Aston Martin, but also the moves and all of the work that Aston Martin has put in since he's been there, and why he is so excited about being at Aston Martin. So Aston Martin earlier this week, or maybe it was late last week, I forget when exactly they released it, but they released an aerial shot of the current Aston Martin factory and compared it to what it looked like when Stroll first bought the team and
Hmm.
came and took over. For those of you who, we've talked about it before, some of the evolution of the team, but basically the Aston Martin team is based literally right across the street from Silverstone. I mean, you go across the road, you're in the car park for Silverstone. That's how close the factory is. So when the factory was, and we'll talk, we're going to have another podcast here in a few weeks where we're going to start talking about the evolution of Formula One teams and as they've gone through, their various iterations, But back when it was still Jordan, and then all the way up until the time that until Lawrence Stroll bought the team, they worked out of one fairly large, but not, by any means, when you compare it to like a Red Bull or Ferrari, their facilities, but it was a still modestly sized factory there at Silverstone. Well, the aerial shot that they released has now shown, first of all of the improvements that they made to the original building. Plus, they have added two additional buildings. So now the footprint of where the Aston Martin factory now sits is probably about 4 to 5 times the size that it was
Wow.
just 3 years ago. And it
It's
is just
amazing.
absolutely astonishing. But the coolest thing is, if you look very closely in at least was if you look at the picture that was released on X, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, they have actually built a miniature version of Silverstone at the factory, which I'm assuming is for a kart track that
Huh.
I don't know if it's for the employees to enjoy or if it's meant to be like a practice facility for the Aston Martin drivers, maybe some
Wow.
of the,
Yeah.
the engineers and things like that. But they have actually built, and you can see it in the aerial shot, a miniaturized version of Silverstone.
Wow.
It is utterly incredible. It is amazing to see.
That sounds
But
really
you
cool.
but you can definitely see in the picture, you can see the new wind tunnel that Aston Martin has built to help out, which I'm sure is going to be a huge boon for, the aerodynamicist of all aerodynamicists and Adrian Newey as he starts his work on, both improving the 2025 car and actually just, as we talked about last week, the first, completely Adrian Newey car for 2026. I mean, he is going to have all of these facilities available to him, and that was one of the things that Fernando was saying was is that just that the investments that have been made, not just in the people, not just in everything else, but in the infrastructure and everything, is going to make Aston Martin a place where drivers are going to want to come drive, i.e., maybe Max Verstappen, but we'll get into that at another time. Like what we talked about last week about the rumors that are floating around, which seem to be gathering steam even more so beyond the motorsport article that was published. But I digress. The other thing is basically Fernando said this is a place where people are going to want to come to work. And we've seen that with, a lot of the hires that they've already made and and what I'm sure we're going to see even more so as this year progresses going into 2026.
Yeah, it's like we've said before, having Adrian Newey there in 2026 is just it's going to be amazing. And
Of that, I have absolutely no doubt. I fully believe that that is exactly what we're going to see.
yeah,
The more that it has started to, the rumors have gathered steam because now, I mean, now admittedly, the Daily Mail is more of a tabloid, and I don't know, they have been known to, they have been known to deal in hyperbole and really push the
yeah,
boundaries
oh
of
yeah,
what is real.
right,
So I can't, you can't really put as much stock into it coming from the Daily Mail as like what we talked about last week, with the vaunted motorsport magazine publishing, a article saying that, this may be happening. But apparently, the Daily Mail has published even some additional information that said that you know, they might be looking at paying Verstappen as much as 200 and something $1 million a year for like the next 5 years.
yeah,
So a very long-term contract, which, could make Verstappen a
mhm,
billionaire.
easily.
And my mind is just blown.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all the accounts that I've seen so far. They basically said, "Here's $1 billion if you race for us." Loyalty is one thing, but looking out for number one, I mean, that's quite another. Because at any point you could be cut, right? So we all know that in Formula One, you have a couple of bad seasons, or at Red Bull, you have a couple of bad races.
Yeah,
You could be cut pretty
absolutely.
quick. Now, obviously that's not going to happen with Verstappen, but uh, your time in the sport is very limited. So you have to get as much out of that time that you're there as possible. So
Yes,
I wouldn't blame him
absolutely.
at all for going to Aston.
No, I don't. I wouldn't either because we talked about this,
Yeah.
quite a bit at length in last week's podcast. So first of all, that Jos Verstappen, Max's dad, has got to be exploding off the top of his head.
Yeah.
First of all, the opportunity for Max to get away from Red Bull because,
Yeah.
Verstappen Senior has made no bones about his distaste for Christian Horner, the team principal at Red Bull. So for him to, to be able to take a long-term deal at Aston Martin, being reunited with Adrian Newey, under all the new technical regulations, reunited with Honda, or actually it would be a continuation of his work with Honda because he'll have Honda power this year at Red Bull and he would have Honda power at Aston Martin starting in 2026. So I see all the stars aligning that I got a sneaking suspicion that these rumors are going to prove to be true and
Yeah.
we're going to see an announcement sooner rather than later.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
You
It's going to be
know.
interesting for sure.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the stupid new rule that the FIA came out with. And when you and I both, when they first made this announcement, we were just shaking our heads
Yeah.
because so the FIA has come up with a new appendix to the sporting regulation. Did it without any kind of vote or anything from, which they do have certain unilateral rules that they can make without having to get any approval from the teams or anything else. And this new rule has basically said that in the situation of a press conference or any kind, now they did make the point to clarify specifically that this is anything said outside of the car. So in the heat of the moment, over the radio or something, if they happen to drop an expletive, um, the stewards can take and kind of let that slide. But at the steward's discretion, any expletives or harsh language or any criticism of the FIA can start
Crazy.
off with a penalty of 40,000 pounds for the first infraction. The second infraction can be, I think I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think it was double, so it was 80,000 pounds plus a suspended 1 month suspension, meaning if they have another incident within that 1 month, they can immediately be suspended for the rest, for a month. Or, and on the third infraction, they receive um, 120, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
120,000. Yeah.
120,000 pound fine plus a full 1 month suspension from the sport.
It's crazy.
I'm like, what the F? I
Yeah,
mean,
so
this is,
you're telling me that grown adults can't say anything against your organization?
mhm.
That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So no critiques, no, hey, this is how you get better, nothing. You can't say anything against the FIA.
Yep.
Yeah, no.
But, well, the only problem is, though, is that they have precedent for
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
The NFL here in America, the National Football League, and when I say football, I'm talking about the American football, the National Football League, the National Hockey League, the National Basketball Association, all of these professional sports, they all have clauses in their rules that say if you criticize us at our discretion, we can fine you. And this has happened to, very well-known team owners like Mark Cuban has been fined a number of times by the NBA. Kraft,
yeah,
who is actually very good friends with Roger Goodell, he criticized Kraft. For those of you who don't know, Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the National Football League here in America, and Robert Kraft is the owner of the New England Patriots. And even though the two of them are friendly, Kraft actually criticized something that the league was doing after an incident here, which we won't go into. But he actually criticized the league, and Goodell fined him. So I mean, it's not without precedent that other professional sports have come out, with these kind of rules. But I don't like them here in America. I don't like them, this rule being implemented by the FIA. If it's one thing to take slander or make stuff up in trying to make a point about your particular sports governing body, but if there's a validity to it, if there's truth for them to say hey, this is a stupid rule, or
right.
this rule, or the FIA needs to do a better job of policing, or they need to
Yeah,
be more consistent with the way that they apply the rules,
right.
being able to criticize, your organization to help better the organization, and for them to just go, "Oh, well, we don't like
Yeah,
that. It hurts our feelings. We don't want that to
I
happen, so we're
know.
finding
Exactly.
money."
Exactly.
It is the most ridiculous thing. I mean, like I said, I don't like the fact that, the a lot of the sports leagues here in America already have these things in place, but now for the FIA to follow suit, I think is just utterly ridiculous.
I couldn't agree more. It's
You know,
unbelievable.
and the thing is though, is that now you're going to start seeing more I think you're going to start seeing two things. One, you're going to start seeing more, incidents like what we had last year with Max, who was already, in trouble with the FIA, wouldn't talk during the press conference because, he'd already been slapped around, by the stewards.
Yeah,
So he said, "No, I'm not going to say anything else. If you want to talk to me, come see me outside." And then he went outside and then proceeded to, talk to the reporters outside of the official press conference. And I think that rubbed the FIA the wrong way. And so
Sure.
that's when they came back with this stupid rule.
Right.
But I think you're going to see more of that happening, but then it's going to be more of an off the record type situation where it's instead of being Max
Yeah.
said this, it's going to be an unnamed driver said this.
Yeah.
So that way
Exactly.
they
You're
don't get in
right.
trouble. But the drivers are going to, and the other thing too, though, is I don't. One of the things that bothers me is that all of the, and we've talked about this before, is that all of the drivers, they all go through media training. They all are
Hmm.
so well coached in what they say. That's one of the things that I miss greatly about drivers back during, the late 80s, and 90s and stuff, back when they would say stuff just off the top of their head,
Yeah.
and they didn't have all the coaching that they have nowadays and stuff. And so that's one of the things that I think is what made motorsport, and particularly Formula One and IndyCar and NASCAR, so engaging with people, was is that these guys all had, like, they were real personalities, and these
Yeah.
personalities, these flamboyant, arrogant, whatever superlative that you want to use, they were allowed to express those opinions and show off their personality, and that's part of what made people love fall in love with the sport, and
Yeah.
particularly those personalities and everything. And now it's almost like the FIA wants them to just be robots, to not have any personality, and I think that's just absolutely the wrong thing.
I couldn't agree more. Exactly right.
All right, so we got an announcement a couple, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, that the F1 is actually going to have a big fan season kickoff on February 18th at the O2 Arena in London, England. Tickets sold out in about an hour, they said. So all 20 drivers are going to be there. They're going to be they're basically they're making a very, very big show out of it. Because it's this year, as we've talked about, a couple weeks ago when we did our first podcast for the new year, this is getting ready to start the 75th season for Formula One. So Formula One is trying very hard to make a lot of noise and to
Yeah.
celebrate, the fact that it is their 75th anniversary. And I think this is, we've seen the Formula One do, things kind of like this, but nothing to this degree. And I think it's kind of a cool idea. I'm just kind of holding myself in reservation to see how is this going to be utterly ridiculous, or is this going to be something really cool that we might
Yeah.
start seeing, every year? I don't know. They
Yeah.
haven't, released the full slate of, what's going to be happening, other than the fact that we know that all the drivers are going to be there. We don't know, in what way, the cars, or if any of the cars are going to be shown, if they're going to do any kind of like demonstrations, any of the acts that are going to be performing as well
Right.
alongside the driver appearances and things like that. We really, we don't know what the agenda is going to be just yet. But like I said, I think it's going to be kind of a cool. This could go one of two ways. It could
Yeah.
either be really cool, and really well done, or it could just be so over the top that it's just very cringeworthy.
Yeah.
It's one or the other is what's going to happen,
I
and
was
I'm
trying to
hoping
be
that it's
nice.
more of the former and less of the latter.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice. My assumption is it's going to be more of the way over the top, way overdone, way overproduced. Uh, and Clarkson will probably have another fun little soundbite for it.
Yes,
So I
but
was
with
trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice, but I couldn't do
very true.
it.
But with Clarkson's association with the Alpine team and
Yep.
everything, he could actually be involved,
Yeah,
in some manner.
it'd be
It's
kind of
like,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, it would be, so like I said, it can go one of two ways. It's either going to be really, really cool and really tastefully and well done, or it's going to be so over the top and so cringeworthy. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere in between. It's going to either be
Right.
really cool and everybody's going to love it, or it's going to be just really awful and everybody's going to hate it.
Exactly.
All right, so last thing for today. So we've already started to get a couple of dates set for the 2025 car reveals for the various teams. So as of right now, today, Monday, January 27th, it looks like Williams is going to be kicking everything off for everybody by revealing their car on February 14th, which for those of us here in the States, and I'm sure, in other, countries, that's St. Valentine's Day. So that's, hey, honey, hold off on, we're not going to go out to dinner just yet because I got to watch the Williams reveal on, on F1 TV.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we got the announcement that Haas is going to now I don't they didn't say they went out of their way to say that this is not going to be a reveal other than the fact that they are going to be doing a filming day, and that is when the 2025 car is going to break wraps. Now, whether or not that means that they're also going to have an event of some kind that either earlier that day,
Hmm.
later that day, the day before, Haas hasn't revealed anything about that yet. And then we will actually get the Ferrari reveal on February 19th. And then today, Mercedes took and released some pictures of what their livery will look like for the coming season, but they will actually do the reveal of the car on February 24th.
Nice. Oh, it's exciting times, man.
Yes, exactly. This just, kind of just tells me that, because like I said, this is Monday, January the 27th, we are getting really, really close to to February, which means that we are getting very, very close to the season starting to ramp up. It's like there was a
Yeah.
really cool video yesterday that McLaren released on Instagram and X and places like that on their social media channels where they showed the composite team is actually, coming back into work after the Christmas break, and turning the lights on and, firing up the autoclaves and,
Yeah.
putting together, starting to put together wings and things like that, so it's super exciting the fact that we are getting that much closer to, when we see preseason testing start at the end of February.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, we're really close.
Yes, exactly. I have to say that being the 75th anniversary of Formula One, there's going to be a lot of hoopla, around various tracks and stuff, especially places like Monaco, and Monza, which have hosted races almost every single year that the FI, that Formula One has raced. There's going to be a lot of history, and things like that that's going to be, highlighted, this year, which is going to make it even more exciting. And I think because of the strong showing of Ferrari and the fact that Lewis Hamilton is now at Ferrari, you've got, McLaren, who many think are the odds-on favorite to take everything this year.
Mhm.
They're looked at as the team to beat coming up into the season. And you've also got, you still got Red Bull in there because they started to right the ship towards the end of last season, and it's like, how are they going to come out, especially with their new driver pairing with Lawson
Yeah, yeah,
teaming up with, Max, it's shaping up to be a very, very exciting season coming up. And
yeah.
we'll have a season preview, where we'll talk about this even more at length, coming up probably the week of preseason testing when the teams land in Bahrain. So another episode is done and we are closing up for the week. Join us next week when Corey and I will have more Formula One shenanigans to discuss. So until next time, he's Corey, I'm Scott. We are the pundits of F1 Brake Check. Let's go!
Thank you for listening to F1 Brake Check. If you have enjoyed what you heard, don't miss a single episode by hitting that subscribe button in your favorite podcatcher, or you can watch the video version on YouTube. Help us grow by sharing us with your friends and fellow F1 fans. You can contact us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok and X at F1 Brake Check. Our website is f1brakecheck.com, where you will find links to all our content. We value your passion and your feedback, so please take a moment to review our podcast. Your reviews help us grow and improve, and it means the world to us. Share your thoughts, rate us, and let us know how we can make the show experience even better. F1 Brake Check is a production of Brake Check Media. For your hosts Scott Vick and Corey Broom, until next time, keep yourself inside track limits and try not to pitch it in the kitty litter.